Hi everyone! In this video I want to show you a game between two of the strongest chess engines in the world. Komodo, which has an elo of 3454, and Stockfish with 3456. So they are equal in strength. The game was held in the Top Chess Engine Championship TCEC Season 11 on 16 February 2018. The reason why I decided to show you this game is that one of my subscribers, Enlightened Jedi, added a comment on one of my videos. So I decided to show you a game. The purpose of this video is to observe how computers play all phases of the game and in the end write down some conclusions. As we know, the plan in an opening is to develop our pieces, make castle and connect the rooks by moving the queen. Some other rules that follow from above: pawn moves are good only if they help us to develop a piece. Moving the same piece in an opening is not good. We need to develop our knights before our bishops. Let's look at the game and see if computer follow these rules. I started with d4. This move allows darker bishop and the queen to develop. Black replied with knight to f6, controlling e5 and d5 square, c4, e6, allowing the darker bishop to enter the game, to b4 if white plays knight to c3, but white continues with knight to f3, developing the knights toward the center. The most played move for black in this position is b6, entering the queen's Indian defense with bishop to b7, but black opted for d5, placing a pawn in the center, knight to c3, developing another piece, and we can notice that white developed his knights before the bishops. c6, protecting d5 square, and d8, a5 diagonal is opened for the queen. This is the Semi-Slav defense. The problem with this opening is the light square bishop that cannot enter the game so easy. One of the way for black to resolve his bishop problem is to put it on a8, h1 diagonal. In some lines, black threatens to take on c4, followed by b5, bishop to b7, a6, and c4, freeing his bishop. In this position, white needs to continue his development, and for this he needs to develop his darker bishop on the most forward square in black territory, and that square is g5. That's what happened in the game. Another way for white to continue was e3, but this is blocking the bishop. In this position, several moves have been tried. Knight bd7, defending the knight, h6, kicking the bishop away in order to break the pin, bishop to e7, breaking the pin, intending to short castle, and the fourth move, and the one played in the game, is d takes on c4, winning a pawn. Black releases the center tension, wins a pawn, but allows white to put another pawn in the center. We have e4. This is the Botvinnik system, and also this pawn move allows the light square bishop to enter the game, attacking the c-pawn. Black defended the pawn with b5. As we can see, white opted for piece development, and black opted for material. White has 3 pieces developed, while black has only the knight. Since we have such a huge difference in development, white needs to punish black and open the position. He started with e5, attacking the knight, h6, putting a question to the bishop, bishop to h4, g5, the pin is gone, but white can sacrifice the knight for 2 pawns. Knight takes on g5, h takes, and bishop takes on g5. Knight bd7, defending the knight. White was threatening to take on f6, attacking the queen and the rook. The most played move in this position is e takes on f6, but white played g3. This is the Lilienthal Variation of the Semi-Slav Botvinnik System. The purpose of this move is to develop the light square bishop on h1, a8 diagonal. On f1, a6 diagonal, the bishop is blocked by black pawns, and on g2 he will put some pressure on c6 backward pawn. In this position, black has several weaknesses: a7, c6, f7. Black continue with rook to g8, attacking the bishop, and white defended it with h4. Here black took the bishop, sacrificing the exchange in order to break the pin. Rook takes, h takes on g5, and by taking on g5, white has the h file for his rook. g5 pawn is weak, and black attacked this pawn by playing knight to d5 with the queen. White has two options here: to defend the pawn or push it forward, inflicting some weaknesses in black camp. White chose the second option and he played g6. Black took, and white attacked the pawn with queen to g4. Defending the pawn with the king is too dangerous because white can bring his rooks and the bishop closer to black king and mate him. That's why in the game he played queen to e7, making room for the king to escape. As we can see, we are on move 15 and players only developed their pieces without making castle or connecting the rooks. In this position, white can take on g6, but the queen all alone cannot finish black king. She needs help. There is a rule saying that when attacking moves are not working, we need to bring our least active piece into the game. White continue with bishop to g2, intending to put the bishop on e4 if black defends the queen with f7. White would take the pawn and win the queen. We can also notice that black pieces are cramped. He needs to develop his bishops and the rook from a8. That's why in the game black improved the position of his knight and played knight 7 to b6, and white took on g5 check, queen to f7, blocking the check, and queens are exchanged. As we can see, we reach an endgame. In this stage of the game we need another plan. The plan is made around the opponent pawn structure, and we have two main ideas. Regarding the opponent, we need to attack his weak pawns and squares, and for us we need to push our best pawns. In this position black has several weaknesses: a7, a6, a5, c6, d6, e6, f6, and white has a pass pawn on g3. If he managed to push the f pawn forward and the g1, exchanging the one from e6, he will have two connected pass pawns. So we can conclude that white has an advantage in this position after only 18 moves. If you look at computer evaluation, we'll see a 0.1 equal, but computers are bad in evaluating endgame's position. So white has to follow these two plans in an endgame: to attack opponent weak pawns and push his best pawns. After we found what to attack, we need to see how our pieces can help us to realize our plan. The knight can go to e4 and then to d6, occupying this weak square. The bishop can go to e4. In an endgame, bishop should be placed in the center because he can control both flanks. Also, the bishop will help the f-pawn to go forward to f5. The rook from a1 should come to f1, helping the f-pawn to push. Black has a pawn majority on the queen side, so he should try to push it. From material point of view, white has a pawn and a rook for two minor pieces, so material situation is equal. Let's see what happened in the game. Knight to e4, looking to go to d6, bishop to g7, develops the bishop and tries to make room for the rook to enter the game after the other bishop is developed. Knight to d6 check, king to f8 and f4. White is trying to realize his endgame plan, but first he needs to prepare this push. He would love to play g4 and f5, but f4 is hanging. Bishop to d7, only the king has to move away and the rook can enter the game. King to d2, in an endgame, the king is a valuable piece that needs to be activated, since there are no danger for him. With this move, the king controls e3 square, preventing any knight jumps, and also the rooks are connected. As I mentioned earlier, the other rook can come to f1, supporting a g4 f5 push. Black should start pushing his pawn majority from the queen side or push back white pieces that are in his territory. In the game he played king to e8, controlling h7, preventing any a rook intrusion on the 7th rank. Rook to h5 going forward into black camp, looking to help with f5 push. Knight to c8. Black wants to remove the knight from his position, but white doesn't want to trade and played knight to b7, looking to jump to c5, attacking the bishop. Knight c to e7. The knight is repositioned on a better position, and f5 square is controlled 3 times by black. Also, the knight threatens to jump to f5, attacking d4 pawn, and white cannot defend this pawn. That's why in the game black played bishop to e4, controlling f5, and if the knight jumps here, he will have to trade. a5, try to create a pass pawn. White can try to play rook to f1 and then g4 and f5, but it's too slow, and black can play knight to f5, attacking d4. Another way for white would be to double on the h file, put a rook on g5, pinning the bishop, and then bring the other rook to h7, attacking the bishop. Also, together with the knight, black king can find himself in a mating net if he's not careful. In the game, white played rook to f1, a4, trying to inflict some weaknesses by playing a3, and white played a3 by himself, knight to f5, attacking the pawn, and white is forced to take. Bishop takes, he takes on a5. Pawn structure has changed, and white has a protected pass pawn on the e file. If white would have 2 connected pass pawns on the e and f file, he's winning. A possible continuation for white would be to push g4 now, and after black takes, he has 2 connected pass pawns. In the game, he played rook to g5, and black continues his counterattack on the queen side with b4. It would be a big mistake for white to take, because black will push a3 and his rook will be active, and also black would have a pass pawn on the c file. So for the moment there is no threat for white. In this position, white should continue his plan of pushing his pass pawns or create 2 connected pass pawns, and for this he can try to put the rook on e1 and push e6, driving the bishop away, and then the rook can pick up the f5 pawn. Or the second idea, the one played in the game, improving the knight position to c5, attacking the bishop and threatening e6 with the same purpose. But first he needs to do some preparation. Bishop to c8, pushing e6 is not working for the moment because black king is near the pawn, and black can counter attack and create the pass pawn on the a file. Let's see that possible line. If white tries e6, king to f8, rook takes, check, king to e8, rook to f7, attacking the bishop, bishop to d4, attacking the knight, knight to e4, bishop takes on b2, a takes on b4, and a3. White has only 2 squares and he will get a queen. For example, rook to h1, bishop takes on e6, the rook is attacked, knight to d6 check, king to d8, and black is fighting back. White cannot check on h8 due to the bishop that is controlling the square. That's why in the game white improved the position of his rook to h1. White doesn't hurry before pushing the pawn, rook to a7, trying to defend along the 7th rank, and white can take advantage of the pin and move his other rook forward to h6, attacking the pawn from c6. But in the game he played rook to g6. As you can see, even computers make mistakes. c6 pawn is under attack, bishop to d7, defending, and white can grab the bishop and take the pawn, winning the material. For example, after knight takes on d7, rook takes on d7, rook takes on c6, bishop to f8, rook takes on c4, b takes on a3, b takes on a3, bishop takes on a3, rook takes on a4, knight to b6, attacking the rook, and white cannot take the bishop due to knight to c4 fork. In an endgame, the knight is a very tricky piece, threatening many forks. White didn't choose this line, where he has 3 extra pawns, so in the game he played rook to d6, attacking the bishop for a second time, and black played an intermediate move by taking on a3. White cannot take the bishop because black would have too many pass pawns for a piece. Let's see that line. Rook takes on d7, rook takes, knight takes, a takes on b2, king to c2, a3, protecting the pass pawn. As you can see, black has 3 pass pawns on the queen side. Knight to c5, bishop to f8, attacking the knight, knight to a4, knight to a3 check, king to c3, knight to d5 check, king to c2, bishop to b4, king to b1, c3, king to a2, knight to a3, controlling c2, intending to put the knight on d2 and then push the pawn. Rook to e1, c2, and white cannot take the knight due to queen. So white is lost here, but in the game he took back on a3, bishop to e8, and in this position, if attacking moves are not working, we need to improve the position of our pieces. Here the knight stands well on this position. The rook from h1 can go to b1, trying to go on the 8th rank, since on the h file there is no entry point. The move played in the game was rook to d8, going forward, pinning the bishop, and black continue with knight to c7, defending the bishop. The drawback of this move is that the knight is no longer looking at the f4 pawn, and white can push g4, trying to have 3 connected pass pawns. Also, the knight blocks the rook access to the 7th rank. So white push g4, f takes on g4. White can push now his pass pawn, but he chooses to play a rook to c8, preventing the knight to move. If the knight moves, bishop will drop. Bishop to f8, the knight is attacked, and in the same time the light square bishop is free to move. f5. In this position white is winning. Black took the knight, d takes on c5. Black needs some counterplay. White has a weak pawn on a3. Black rook can go to b3 and then attack the pawn. Then he will have a pass pawn on the a file. In the game he played a rook to b7, but before going to b3 he needs to move his knight. King to c1, controlling b2. Another way for white was to go to h4 and attack the weak pawn. c3, controlling b2. The rook attacked the isolated pawn. g3, rook to g4, check, king to f8, rook takes on g3, knight to d5, defending the pawn. Another way was to put the knight on b5, defending and attacking white pawn, trying to create a pass pawn on the a file. In this position, black threatens to play knight to e7, attacking the rook and the pawn. White cannot go forward with the rook to g6, attacking the pawn due to the knight fork. That's why in the game he went to the h file, rook to b2, intending to go behind the pass pawns. There is a rule in chess saying that rooks should be placed behind pass pawns. Rook to h8 check, king to g7, rook takes on e8. So white won the bishop, and black goes forward with the knight, trying to force a perpetual, but white prevented black plan. Rook to b8, white wants to exchange a pair of rooks. Black doesn't want this. Rook to g8 check, king to f7, e6 check, king to f6. If white tries to give another check with the other rook to f8 and push e7, he's mated by black. The pawn from c3 is controlling b2 and d2 squares, and the knight is controlling c2. So black is threatening mate with the rook on e1. That's why he brought the rook back to g1, preventing this mate. In this position, black cannot touch f5 with the king or the knight because he's losing. Let's see both lines. If black tries to grab the pawn with the knight takes on f5, we would have rook to f8 check. Taking the pawn with the king is not okay because the rook will give a check and pick up the rook. So the king has to go to a e5, rook to g5, and the knight is lost. Rook to f2, defending, e7, and white gets a queen and he's winning. Let's see what happens if the king takes on f5. We would have e7, and next we have a queen, knight to c4, rook to f1 check, king to e6, we have a queen, and pick up the rook so this is not good for black as well. In the game we have rook to c2, check, king to b1, rook to e2, and white has to be careful here. If white rook from b8 would leave the b file, black has a perpetual or gives mate to white. For example, let's see that line. If the rook goes to the g file, just to illustrate this, we'll have rook to b2 check, king to c1, rook to a2, threatening mate, king to b1, and it's a perpetual, same thing, check. And if the king goes to a1, it's over, it's mate with the knight. So in the game, white gave a check with the rook on f8, king to e5, king to e7, it's not working due to rook to f7, king somewhere on the 8th rank and mate with the rook on g8. So black is forced to go to e5, rook to c1, avoiding perpetual, and black takes both pass pawns for white. Knight takes on a5, rook takes on c3, king takes on e6, rook to e8 check, knight to e7, rook to c4, trying to get the other pawn, rook to e1 check, and this check helps white to come closer to the center. Rook to e5, preventing white to take, because black will take the pawn from c5, king to d3, the king comes closer defending the pawn, and then white rook can grab the pawn, king to f7, attacking the rook, rook to d8, knight to f5, controlling d4 and e3 squares, and white played rook to c8, attacking the pawn from c6, and after this move black resigned. There are several options for black to continue to defend the pawn by bringing the knight back, or give a check on e3. Let's see both options. So the first one, knight to e7, defending and attacking the rook, rook to c7, king to e6, rook to e4, and white wants to exchange everything because the pawn endgame is winning. Rook takes, king to f6, rook takes on e7, king to takes on e7, king to e5, king to d7, king to f6. So you can see white king is getting the pawn and white is promoting, so is winning. Let's see the other options with the check on e3. King to d2, rook takes on a3, rook takes on c6, rook to a2 check, king to c3, rook check, king to b4, rook to f3, rook to h6, rook to h4, attacking the rook, rook to h4, knight to c2 check, king takes on f4, rook to a3 check, king to b5, and white is an exchange and a pawn up, so he's winning, and we can stop here. So the conclusions from this game. Komodo engine opted for development while Stockfish for material and got punished very quickly. 2. Both engines liked to play sharp openings and the game was transferred into an endgame very quickly, where Komodo had an advantage of move 18. 3. In the endgame, there were mistakes on both sides. For example, on move 29, white failed to obtain two connected pass pawns, realizing one of the plan in endgame. On move 32, white failed to bring more pieces into the attack. As we know, when attacking moves are not working, we need to bring the least active piece into the game. On move 33, white failed to take the material advantage and enter into a winning position. There are many other mistakes, but the conclusion is that computers are good in openings and middle game position due to their computing power, but not that good on evaluating endgame position. So this was the game between Komodo and Stockfish. I hope that you found this video useful. Please watch other games from my channel and leave some comments and suggestions in the comments sections. See you next time. Bye.